Hello, my name is JJ Kim, and today we will be talking about fossils. Fossils are remnants of animals or plants that can tell us about the past environment and timing of when it was deposited. So what is a fossil exactly? Fossils are any direct evidence of ancient life that are found in sedimentary rocks. For example, the reason why we say there is no guarantee of past life in Mars is because although we have found things such as complex carbon compounds or change in methane that could indicate life, we never really found a fossil, such as body fossil or trace fossil at Mars. So in short, we have no direct evidence to say that there has been life on Mars. Body fossils are the actual remains of an animal, plant, or even microbial life. Trace fossils are preserved actions or behaviors, like footprints, feces, or a mold of a fossil. This also includes petrified wood because wood actually decomposed and only the imprints of the tree trunk is left here. Fossils are not just found on land, but marine sediments also hold many different organisms. This is an example of a foraminifera and diatom, which have calcareous and siliceous cells that are preserved in marine sediments. These are usually tiny planktic organisms that you need a microscope to see. So fossils come in all different shapes and sizes. Now, why do we study fossils? There are 5 main scientific reasons. First, to determine the relative age of sedimentary rocks, to study the evolution of life, to determine paleoclimate and ecology, to determine where to look for fossil fuels, and last, to reconstruct ancient plate and ocean positions, for example, the Pangaea. There are a few conditions that need to be met for a fossil to be left for a long time, so we can discover them. First includes having hard parts, like bones or shells. Second is rapid sedimentation rate, meaning that the dirt has to quickly cover the remains so it doesn't get degraded or interrupted. Adding on top of that, low oxygen environment helps the remains stay within the sediment for a longer time, so it can be fossilized well. These 3 conditions can happen in many places, but regions that have all of these factors are often referred as a Lagerstätten, a place with abundance of fossils. Now, there are a few ways to classify fossils, and I'll go over the animal classification briefly. We can go down the biological system from domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. Using a killer whale as an example, the domain would be Eukarya, the kingdom would be Animalia, and the phylum would be Chordata, which are animals that have spine. Going way down the line into species, the killer whale would be an orca. Further on for this lab today, symmetry will be something important to keep in mind. You'll be looking at different fossils and determine the symmetry. For these can be used as one of a factor to distinguish the fossil genus or species. Bilateral is the symmetry running across the middle. So the left and right is symmetrical to each other like a mirror. Radial is when the body part is symmetrical in many angles along the central axis. Asymmetry is the lack of symmetries. Now, here are some quick examples. The cute cat is a symmetry. The lobster is also symmetry. Starfish and orange has that axis in the center and is radial. The coral below has no specific symmetry and is asymmetrical. Now that we have talked about fossils themselves, let's see how they can be used. Before that, we have to understand the concept of geological time. Geologic time is a fancy way of saying very, very old Earth history. Since the Earth was born 4.5 billion years ago, the history has been divided into 4 big eons: the Hadean, Archean, Proterozoic, and Phanerozoic. These are usually divided by big biological events like extinctions. These eons can be divided into era during the Phanerozoic eon, which is the most recent eon. These are 3 eras: Paleozoic, Mesozoic, and Cenozoic. This further can be broken down into periods. The famous Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous periods had dinosaurs are within the Mesozoic era. The extinction of dinosaurs marked the end of Mesozoic era. Another important period is the Quaternary period of Cenozoic era, when humans evolved. So, how did geologists figure out the geologic times? They used sediments and fossils within. Sediments deposit from bottom to top, and sometimes these sediments contain fossils within. These sediment layers are called stratum, or strata for a plural. These strata sometimes have fossils that are common in numbers, geographically widely distributed, and limited in time span that help dating the sediment layer or knowing the environment. These fossils are called index fossils. Here is an example of how an index fossil can be used to know the time. Let's say we have some trilobite and shell fragments here in the sediments. From the trilobite, I can guess that the stratum was deposited during some time in the Devonian, which is the orange period shown here. And the shell can tell me that it was deposited during late Devonian. Keep in mind that it gets younger as you go from the bottom to the top of the sediment layer. So using both of these index fossils, I can say with confidence that this stratum was deposited during late Devonian. Now, same thing will apply for the other index fossils and its assemblages. A great example of this geologically is the reconstruction of Pangaea. Pangaea was a supercontinent that occurred during late Paleozoic to early Mesozoic. Scientists found these fossils that are found in faraway continents that form a nice flowing band and were able to piece the fossils together, like a puzzle, to reconstruct a long-lost supercontinent, which is the Pangaea. Now that was the basics of fossils. To add an interesting story about geologic timescales, remember when I have mentioned that most geologic divisions are based on big biological events? Mass extinctions are often key biological events that distinguish the era or period. There were a total of 5 mass extinctions throughout the Earth history that wiped out the majority of species on Earth. And the largest extinction was during the late Permian. which marked the end of Paleozoic, but formed a field for dinosaurs to develop and thrive. This wiped out 90% of genera in the world. Another famous mass extinction is the KPG boundary, also known as the KT boundary, which has its name coming from the Cretaceous and Paleogene. This marked the extinction of dinosaurs. This was all for the lab lecture. Here are some practical guidance for the lab this week. First, you'll read the lab reading material uploaded on Carmen as a review. Some parts are optional, so make sure to take a look at the instruction written on the online instruction page for lab reading material. Then you'll make your own simple trace fossil and post a picture of it on the discussion board. It can be anything from a simple footprint on your backyard dirt to your cat's paw print on flour that exploded when you were trying to bake, which happens all the time, right? You will also be uploading this picture on the quiz for a small point, so make sure you take a picture of your own original trace fossil. Next, complete the quiz to receive full credits for this week's lab. I recommend Chrome or Explorer, for other minor browsers can sometimes have trouble retrieving the pictures. If you have any questions regarding the lab, feel free to email me or join me in the office hour. The email and office hour will be posted on the lab instruction page. Thank you.